All right, we are back here on the Just End the Suffering podcast, talking NFL playoffs, coming off possibly the greatest weekend of football we've ever seen. Joining me today, the FanSided NFL insider, Matt Verderame, is here. Matt, how are you?
Doing great, Michael. How are you?
Pretty good. I have to say, this weekend was so much fun. We saw, literally, as I said several times here, I think the greatest weekend of football we've ever seen. Did you feel that way watching all these games?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that there's even an argument that it wasn't the best weekend of NFL lore. I don't know that there's ever been more excitement in a weekend. And there's certainly been some other ones over the years. If you went back and looked, there have been some iconic games that have shared a weekend. The 81 conference championship games are both iconic games. 72 divisionals. This was all four games being razor thin, all being decided on the last play. Obviously, one in overtime, three at the end, and with road kickers winning the game. So it had it all. I thought the game on Sunday night, I think it was the finest exhibition of quarterback play I've ever seen in my life. I don't think you could ever find a game where two guys both played better than that. I don't know that one of them made a mistake the entire game. Nobody threw a pick. Nobody lost a fumble. I think Allen maybe had one throw to Knox. He kind of overthrew him. He would like that back. It was just a little screen pass. Neither guy threw a ball that should have been picked. It was just magnificent football.
Oh, for sure. I want to kind of hit on one thing from each of these games before we get to the games this weekend. So, the Tennessee-Cincinnati game, I think the first one here. Is it simplistic to say that Ryan Tannehill is the reason the Titans are not playing this weekend?
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair assessment. I would also say, though, and I think of all the stuff that happened this weekend, and there's so much that it's hard to keep track of everything, Mike Vrabel has somehow gotten no blame in any of this. Nobody has anything to say about him. And I like Mike Vrabel, by the way. I think he's a very good head coach, but I thought he had a really bad game. That's a game where, I'm sorry, you cannot lose. You cannot lose when your defense has 9 sacks. 9 sacks. And yet, there's a game where you lose because you can't really get anything going offensively. You have 3 turnovers from the quarterback, which is on Tannehill, especially the last interception was just mind-boggling. The only thing you can't do there is throw a pick. But I look at that last sequence, that last 3 minutes. You're tied. You have the ball. You have all your timeouts for Tennessee. What are you doing? You're running the ball, taking 40 seconds off the clock for a 2-minute warning. And they come out of the 2-minute warning. They complete a pass and down. They run 38 more seconds off the clock. Then they snap the ball. They run for no gain. They run another 30 seconds off the clock. If you think that little of your quarterback, then cut him, trade him, get rid of him. Because you're in an AFC divisional game. You're the 1 seed. If you win that game as it plays out, you host Kansas City. I get it. Tannehill is not an upper echelon quarterback, but he's also not. He's not, Zach Mettenberger. My God, take a shot, try. Get 3 minutes. It wasn't like you were asking him to take a bunch of 20, 25-yard attempts there. Just try to pick up 40, 50 yards, kick field goal. They didn't do that, but they also didn't sit on it, and he ends up throwing a pick. So I thought, Tannehill was terrible. Vrabel was every bit as bad at the end of that game.
Yeah, certainly a fair point. I'm going to go now to the Packer-49er game. Also, the 49ers got to move the ball for most of that game. Ends up winning coming back because the special teams make some big plays, and Aaron Rodgers cannot score the ball here. So we're going to continue the blame train here. So who is more to blame for the Packers losing? Aaron Rodgers putting up 10 points, the special teams just being abysmal?
I think it's one of those things where it's both, but I look at Rodgers more. The special teams was atrocious. No one would argue that. They had a field goal get blocked. They had a punt that gets blocked, that gets returned for a touchdown. And the defense gives up 6 points all game and you lose. That said, Aaron Rodgers is going to be the MVP of the league for a second straight year. Games at home on his racket, and he did nothing. They had a really nice first drive, and he had one play where he leaks out to the right on a busted play and first down Jones for 75 yards. He did nothing outside of that the entire game. Nothing. He didn't drive the ball really at all. And You look at his numbers. He had 27 targets in the game. 21 of them were to Adams or Jones. The only other person who had multiple targets was Dominique Dak. I mean, you watch the game on Sunday night. Mahomes is throwing touchdown passes to Byron Pringle. They're getting Cole Hardman involved. They're swinging the ball to Jarek McKinnon. These are not bad players, but they're not household names either. It wasn't all just Kelsey and Hill. With the Bills, Deke had 3 catches for 7 yards. He did nothing. The Chiefs completely took him out of the game. And yet Gabriel Davis goes for 200-plus and 4 touchdowns. Like, Allen and Mahomes didn't just turtle when their best guy was covered. They kept gunning it. And I thought that was the biggest failure of Rodgers in that game. Look, I get the Niners have a good defense, and DeMeco Ryans is a really good coordinator. But at some point, you've got to be willing to throw the ball to some places that maybe you don't want to go with football. Maybe you've got to find your secondary options. And I felt like throughout that game, Rodgers was just completely unwilling to do it, and it came back to bite him.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think this is the last we've seen of him in Green Bay?
I think he's going to get traded. And I didn't last year. You know, when everybody thought he was going to get dealt, and God knows I've been wrong plenty of times in my career, but that was one thing. Everybody felt like he had so much leverage. I didn't feel that way at all. I thought the Packers would hold on to him. They play hardball. That's what they ended up doing. And it worked out. They went 13-4. They won the division. They were the 1 seed, the whole deal. He's going to be the MVP again. This time, I think it's different. They're going to lose a host of players in free agency. They're going to cut some guys as well. They are $40 million over the projected cap. That team is not going to be as good as it was this time next year. It's just not. They're going to have to probably lose the Smith brothers off the edge. You know, then there's Alexander and there's Adams and there's Tunyon, among other free agents as well. Devondre Campbell, who was the first team All-Pro linebacker. Rasul Douglas, who was great for them, a corner down the stretch. So I think if you're the Packers and you're going to lose all that, or at least some of that, and you couldn't win this year, you couldn't even win a playoff game, I think it might be time to say, let's see what we've got in Jordan Love, trade Rodgers for 2 or 3 first-round picks and change. And you start building up a new team in a new era.
Yeah, speaking of a new era, we might have one coming in Tampa Bay. Other reports came out over the weekend that Tom Brady's considering retirement. He said on this podcast week that he's got to listen to what his family wants to do because he said it's not just me, it's also got way their interest in here. He's talked for a while playing until he's 45, but I think the smoke around here is worth monitoring. I personally can't see him retiring after this season. Do you think we've seen the last Tom Brady?
No, I don't. I think he'll play one more year. He's got 1 year left on his deal. They're still really good. Now, they're another team. They're going to lose some pieces to this offseason. There's no way around that. Godwin, even if he comes back, I mean, you're probably talking mid-season. I think there's a good chance that team is not the team it once was. But if you're Brady, unless it truly is just a situation where his family says, hey, look, we don't want to do this anymore, then yeah, hey, listen, you got a wife, your kids, you listen, and you do what's best for your family. But I think he plays one more season. He's still great. I mean, hell, he had 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns this year. It wasn't like he was a bum, so he can still do it physically. I still think the fire burns. I don't think there's any question about that. But I do think he's probably got a year left. I would be surprised if he hung it up, but I'd be equally surprised if he plays past this upcoming season.
Yeah, let's get to obviously the game of the weekend, probably the game of all time here, Bills-Chiefs. And I think the big thing coming out of this game is the sequence at the end there. And everyone's been screaming for all week about the overtime rules that you change, which they do. But I think to me, the thing is not getting reported enough here is the fact that the Bills kicking in the end zone with 13 seconds left, it really ends up costing them the football game because it was a mistake. Turner first guessed it for CBS. He basically said, hey, don't give Mahomes any more time than he needs to try and come back and get in field goal range. What do you think about how that end of that game played out for Buffalo?
Well, I actually have a little bit of a different opinion on this. And look, I'm not arguing that they should have kicked the ball play to take some time off. I think that's true. I was surprised in the moment when they didn't do it. But I think the bigger blunder was the way they played defense in the last 13 seconds. They were guarding the sidelines, and they were backing up. The Chiefs had all 3 timeouts. Like, it wasn't a situation where the Chiefs had no timeouts. Then, okay, fine, I get it. You're playing like Kansas City can't stop the clock. The Chiefs just went right up the field. And look, as great as Mahomes was in that game, I thought, the poise under pressure certainly is impressive, but those are the 2 easiest throws you had all night. I mean, it couldn't have been any easier. Kelsey's running wide open up the seam. That was the Kelsey's credit and adjustment on the fly. I think that's probably the most impressive part of the whole game was Kelsey thinking to do that on that spot. But Yes, the kickoff set all that in motion. They should have pooch kicked it or something like that. But I also look at it this way. What if they kick it off and Tyreek Hill runs it back 50 yards? Then everybody's screaming at McDermott. How do you not just kick it through the back of the end zone? I think the more egregious blunder was you're sitting there with 13 seconds left and a good defense. Like, how are you not playing where you just drop 8 guys? You don't need a pass rush. Mahomes has to throw the ball right away anyway. Like, drop 8, bang Kelsey at the line of scrimmage, bang Hill at the line of scrimmage, play over top of them, make everything hard. And they just never did it. They just let the Chiefs just basically do whatever they want on those 2 plays. Now, when you have a team with those kinds of talents, it's going to happen. I mean, it's inevitable. Unless they drop the ball or Mahomes makes a bad throw. But there was nothing to lead you throughout the first 59 minutes of that game that you thought that was going to happen. So I thought, yes, the kickoff was a mistake. I think they should have played it differently. But that was a brutal job by Leslie Frazier. I think he's a good coach, but he had a bad 13 seconds, and it cost him their season.
Oh, absolutely. Let's go ahead now to this weekend's action here. We got the 2 games here. Start first with the AFC game, the Bengals and the Chiefs. These teams met back in Week 17. Cincinnati won at the gun. And now, I mean, they are going to Arrowhead this time. I feel like the stage is set here for Kansas City to get revenge here, and I don't think this one's going to be particularly close. What's your handicap on this game getting into it?
I think the Burrow, I'm calling the Burrows. I might as well have. I think the Bengals are legitimate, and Burrow is the nub. I do. I think he's not as physically gifted as Allen and Herbert and Mahomes. He's not the athlete, obviously, because Lamar Jackson is. But he has that quality about him. That guy, he's cool as can be under pressure. He's got enough arm. He's tough as hell. He's a leader. He's a winner. That team, they're going to be a problem for a long time. That said, this is not the Raiders or the Titans. This is another animal. And I get it, as you mentioned, and rightfully so. They not only beat the Chiefs, Burrows went 446 yards in that game. Chase went for 266 and 3 touchdowns. They destroyed the Chiefs defense in that game. One thing about that, I actually think it helps Kansas City. Kansas City has now seen it in person. They're not just looking at film. They played it. Spagnuolo in that game was extremely aggressive. I believe, according to Doug Farrar over USA Today, they blitzed 31 times in that game with at least 6 guys. I mean, Kansas City just relentlessly went after Burrow. They will not do that in this game. They will rush 4. They'll get home because Cincinnati can't block. And I don't think it's much of an issue there. I think they will get pressure. Jones had a couple sacks in Week 17. I think they'll have similar numbers here. And they'll probably just do what they did to Diggs. They'll double chase. They'll do whatever they have to do to take him out of the game. And while the Chiefs did give up 36 points against the Bills, they only gave up 21 through the first 58 minutes, and then Allen just went out of his mind. And you started to see without Tyrann Mathieu what a deficiency that was. I think there's a good chance Matthew's back on Sunday. They are looking like they're going to get Rashad Fenton back, which is a big deal. He's a big upgrade over Mike Hughes. I think the Bengals will make it interesting, but I think it's something like 38-27. I think the Chiefs will advance.
Yeah, and let's go to the other game real quick, the NFC game here. 49ers-Rams. These met twice this season. 49ers won both, including Week 18, to get in the playoffs with the big comeback win in overtime here. They won 6 straight against the Rams, dating back to 2019. It also feels like there's a little bit of match with this 49er team here. What do you think about this matchup heading into Sunday night?
I'm picking the Rams, but I'm not confident about it. It matters that when you've lost 6 in a row, it's the same coaches in all those games and a lot of the same players. I know the Rams, obviously, this year, of course, is a little different for them, especially with Stafford and Odell and Von Miller. I get that. But they had all those guys for these 2 games this year, and they got hammered in San Francisco, and they got out to a fast start at home and then lost. And that game, it felt like candlestick with the way the crowd was. And I would expect it to be similar this time around, despite the Rams' efforts to keep ticket sales from within the local area. It's tough. It's a tough game to pick. My concern is with Trent Williams. If he's not healthy, I think it's a massive issue. I know Shanahan said he expects him to play, and maybe he does, and maybe that's enough. But if he plays, how healthy is he? If Trent Williams is healthy, like legitimately not only plays, but can actually function the way he normally functions, I think the 49ers did a great job to win the game. I might even pick him. But because I don't know that he's healthy, and I wonder about that, I'll say Rams 23-20. But that game to me is more of the toss-up. I'd be pretty surprised if the Chiefs lost. I would not be surprised either way in the NFC.
Absolutely. My last question here is obviously we have a rough idea where you're going with the games here. So Obviously, we have 4 potential matchups left. I ranked them personally for FanSided this week. I put Chiefs 49ers as the top pick here. What do you think the feeling would be inside 345 Park Avenue? How they want these two games to play out for there to have the most interest nationwide?
I think they want the Chiefs to win. I mean, I'm not one of these people who thinks they're going to win games or anything, but I think, if you're the NFL, like Mahomes he's your cash cow. Like you want them in that game. They're just such a draw. They're like the Warriors in the NBA. Everybody wants to see the Splash Brothers and all that. I think they'd like to see the Rams, although I think those are two big markets. Like, I don't think it's really going to matter to them, but the Rams with their glitz and their glamour and all the stars and Stafford, that whole narrative. I'd say that, but I think if the NFL had its druthers, the Chiefs would play in the Super Bowl, and then you get one of your teams. But you know what? The NFL. Here's a little known fact: the highest rated Super Bowl of all time, Super Bowl 16, Bengals and Niners. So take that for what it's worth.
We could get it again this year too.
You could, you absolutely could.
Yeah, for sure, Matt. Thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, can people follow on social media? Keep up with the NFL coverage over at FanSided.
Yeah, check out the content at FanSided.com. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Verderame. You can check out my Stack in the Box podcast, which is on YouTube, as well as all the places you find your other podcasts. You can do the same if you're a Chiefs fan with Arrowhead Addict. If you're a Chiefs fan, you want more content with that. But I'm on Twitter more than any human being should be. So if you really like my articles and my commentary, that's where to find me.
Absolutely. Matt's a great Twitter follow. Matt, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.